entire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully everyone's had a good weekend here. As promised in yesterday's video, we are going to be taking a look at the weeks ahead here. It's pretty much going to be how we close out the month of October here. Outlooks on November are going to be up soon, and then even our winter outlook's going to be coming soon, so look forward to that. Until then, in the meantime, in order to keep track of everything, make sure you hit that like button, you're smashing that subscribe button, and also make sure you hit that notification bell. Make sure you're getting notifications on all my videos. And also, like I said before, hit that share button. Trying to see if I can get to 600 subs by at least next month, if not by the end of the year. Either or is good with me, but sooner the better. Appreciate it. Either way, let's go ahead and get into things here. So we're near the halfway point, or pretty much at the halfway point of this month. Things are pretty quiet. Next 3 days, today there's not even a thunderstorm in the forecast. Probably still could hear a couple rumbles here and there, but nothing really major to be concerned with. No severe threat tomorrow. Chance of thunderstorms maybe towards the northwest, and then towards day 3, no thunderstorms even in the forecast. We look further out from days 4 through 8. Potential is too low for severe weather. When we get to day 5, predictability changes, and also that exists for day 6 as well. And then after that, just as quick as the setup starts to come into play, day 7 and 8, it already is about gone. So we're going to be maybe seeing the potential for one severe setup, and even then I find it questionable right now, although we are looking pretty far out at this point as far as the setup is concerned. So here's a look at things right now. These recently just came in on College View page. This is looking at the upper levels of the atmosphere. Right now we're pretty zonal right now. Ridge is starting to build over the western half of the country here. I'm trying to see if I can get this to roll over here. There we go. But as we can see here, ridge is built up over the west. Eventually it will move its way east. We're going to be seeing some of the warmer temperatures out here, and then off to the east we have the cooler temperatures associated with this trough. As time goes on, here's that ridge starting to move. That trough is starting to work its way out of the country. And then with that, we're going to eventually start to see an increase in temperatures out to the east. And then a new trough will be coming in and starting to cool the west off just a little bit. Of course, this is towards the end of the model run here, so it has to be taken with a grain of salt. A lot can still change. So we're looking at the year right now, and we're 10 days out. So that being said, we have to be watchful for changing conditions on both sides of the country at this point. Like I said, I don't know how much exactly or what the values would be just yet on how much we would warm up out east, but we could get back into the 70s possibly. Here's a look at the GFS here as well, and from what I can see, it's already kind of looking identical at this point. From what I can see, has the trough moving out a little bit earlier out to the east here. Secondary little short trough begins to develop in the upper levels here. Ridge is still very much prevalent out west, but eventually this too will move off to the east. But it looks like it gets a little bit more zonal as time goes on in comparison to the Euro. So a little bit of model discrepancy there will mean that there's a little bit less certainty with this. But this one thing I can say, with the zonal flow that's anticipated here, this will lessen the chance of severe weather. And this will be going right into next week. So as we continue to go on, we start to see a little bit of a rumbling going on here towards the 24th. Nothing really concrete at that time to where I could just say, oh, there's definitely going to be severe weather right now. But maybe down the line we might be able to start to hamper down on what could be ahead here. This setup, however, does look interesting. While it doesn't necessarily guarantee severe weather, this is a very interesting look right here for the upper levels. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on this point, but look how far out we are, 357 hours. I can't put too much merit into it, but if that look continues, we definitely will be talking more about that in the coming days. But we're still about almost 2 weeks out. So usually when we look around this time frame for severe weather, these trends usually will not hold out. But in case it does, I'll be, of course, keeping an eye on. You're not really looking for a forecast at this point. You're looking more so for a trend. So that being said, this is what we're looking at in the upper levels of our atmosphere here. So So let's start to look at a little bit more familiar level. This is a lower level of the atmosphere. This is us looking at the Euro once more. We're looking about maybe 30, about close to 40,000 feet, not quite. But that being said, it's going to be a pretty similar look, just a little bit more definition since we're looking a little bit lower into the atmosphere. This is going to be the catalyst to the potential for some severe storms. It's kind of a setup similar to what we saw earlier this week or last week, whichever one you want to call it at this point. But in the middle of the week, we saw a low pressure, albeit it was positioned a little further to the south, come into play here and had a chance of producing severe weathers on the southern flank here. I do think that in all likelihood, that's going to be a very similar scenario that we see playing out here. I'm thinking maybe Iowa could be a point of interest, and then maybe on Thursday we could be looking at the Ohio Valley. Like I said, this is on Wednesday, going into Thursday in particular, that interests me more than anything. And then as we get into Friday, here's that trough coming in. Going to really take some of those temperatures down quite a bit over towards the eastern half of the U.S. Ohio Valley needs to be definitely on the lookout for some cooler temperatures. Be a nice little chilly morning as we get into the week, into next weekend here. See that pretty stout trough come out of the East Coast here, and then we start to see that ridge begin to build as it's working its way east. Start to see a small little mid-level jet begin to develop, but nothing really major comes out of that. Also, there's activity over here towards the eastern Pacific, which we'll need to be watching really close. I don't think this will mean too much of anything. It could increase the moisture content over here towards Texas, so the threat for some showers and storms could increase towards the end of the month here. But of course, like I said before, we're getting towards the end of the model run here. It's about 10 days for the Euro, so this has to be taken with a grain of salt. Pretty stout trough does look like it tries to come in towards the very end of the month here. We'll have to see how this turns out here to determine what's next. But with this being in play here and this little short trough coming in, it could be a trough ejection. Like I said, we're looking pretty far out at this point, so I can't put much merit into this at all. Make our comparison with the GFS here. It's always good to compare your models. And from what I can see here, it's pretty much a similar deal starting out. It's going to be really towards the middle part of this model run where we start to see a distinct difference. Here we are looking at Wednesday. Might be a chance of severe storms. It's definitely looking like it's progressing a little bit faster than what the Euro is. Both of these are 12Z models, by the way, so the solutions might be a little different, of course, given the fact that these are different and made by different weather breeze, so to speak. GFS is American made, Euro is of course made in Europe. But that being said here, looks like a pretty safe bet that there could be severe weather on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, I would say maybe the chances lessen just a little bit. Kind of hard to say at this point, but this definitely is something that warrants a little bit of attention here. Pretty much a similar outcome as far as the mid-level jet's concerned. Ridge is kind of hanging out west a little bit longer than what the Euro shows a little bit. This is progressing a little slower, but as we get into the 23rd and beyond, it looks like that ridge does start to come into play here. And it does kind of pique my interest a bit that right around the same time as that ridge kind of picks up, we do get a little bit of a mid-level jet trying to develop in a couple of different spots. If this ends up being the case, this could increase the chance for severe weather out west, out towards the Midwest, excuse me. Maybe even the Ohio Valley and Tennessee valleys as we continue to push forward here. Not a lot of confidence in that because, again, we're pretty far out. We're almost 10 days out on this model here. GFS goes to 16 days in case you didn't know. So, like I said, we can look pretty far. So, that being said, there's a lot of things that I can't really put too much confidence in at this point, other than the fact that we're likely to see a warm-up once we get past the 10-day mark here. And this is likely to be how we close out the month. And it's interesting where we see the wind pattern begin to develop here with the jet stream, because this could allot for a severe weather threat, maybe again toward multiple severe weather threats, more so towards the Tennessee and Ohio valleys, maybe even the southeast. Like I said, looking as far out as we are, can't put a lot of merit into it. But nonetheless here, right around the end of the month towards Halloween, it looks like things do start to become a little bit more zonal. So really over the course of the next 10 days, weather could get pretty active. So we'll have to just see how the trends continue to play out from here, but it could get pretty active before the month's out here. This is just based off of wind patterns, of course. As far as temperatures are concerned, we'll run this in a loop here, because I mean, kind of explained it a little bit with the wind maps, but this will give you a decent little visual here. It's a little too fast. I'll slow it down for you guys just a little bit. But this is what we're looking like through most of the week. Warm out west, a little cooler to the east. Still getting to the 60s. We might see a few 70s far south, more so towards like Florida. Maybe Alabama could get a little bit of warmth going. But as time goes on, as we can see here, as the loop continues to play here, that ridge starts to push further to the east, allotting for more warm air to make its way towards the southeast. Mid-Atlantic even could get into the action there as well. Eventually, the west will start to cool off. As we continue to go forward here, we'll look at the GFS. This will be a little bit longer of a run, of course, because we're looking at 16 days instead of 10. As we continue to go on here, though, pretty cool start to the weekend over here towards the eastern half of the U.S. Here's that low pressure center that's likely to cause severe weather. Just how much is still questionable at this point. But as far as the rest of the country is concerned, here's that cold air coming in from the northwest here. This is going to start to spread its way back towards the west once that trough moves out more. So this is pretty much going to be the cycle that we see going through most of this month here. We see that cold air beginning to funnel in more and more from the north here. Once that ridge kicks in, it's going to become a little bit more oriented from Alaska, I would say, at this point. A little bit more from the Arctic. So that being said, a lot of questions here in regards to just how cool or how warm we could get here before the month is out. It's going to be really intriguing to see exactly how things play out with the last 16 days of the month here, and then also getting a sneak peek at what November could look like. So I'm looking at dew points here because, of course, with the potential of a severe weather threat, I of course want to always try to look at moisture returns. So one thing to make note of here, and this is one thing that kind of has me hesitant, even more hesitant than usual, to try to latch on to a severe threat, is the lack of moisture return. Usually when you look for a severe weather threat, you want those moisture returns, whether it's a warm core or cold core setup, to be at least in the mid 50s for dew points. We just aren't really getting there. There's a couple of spots that try to come in around Thursday that lead me to believe there might be a chance, but even then we're just barely scraping by at that. So that being said, it just kind of leaves me a little bit uncertain in regards to what lies ahead on that particular setup. What I do find interesting is right around that time where the 23rd, 24th time frame is, where I was thinking there would be another setup, we do get some decent moisture returns. Just how far they make it up to the north and out to the Midwest, for example, where I was highlighting that area in particular, maybe being in line for some severe here, still questionable. But it looks like we do get sufficient moisture return. 60-degree plus dew points, about where I would say you would want to be in regards to severe weather, at least towards the bare minimum. This is usually with more of a warm core setup. Colder core setups, you can usually get up into the mid 50s and be all right. But usually 60 degrees, I would say, is the threshold, so to speak. So I'm thinking there could be a possibility of severe weather anywhere from, I would say, Iowa all the way down, even into Arkansas, through a large portion of Missouri at this point, possibly within the next 10 days. Again, like I said, this is looking pretty far out, so I can't guarantee that this is going to happen. This is likely to change. Just how much it'll change is going to be the real question here. So as far as GFS is concerned, it's going to look pretty similar starting out, but of course keep in mind we have a few extra days on here in comparison. So this is looking at Wednesday. As far as Wednesday is concerned, it's a pretty similar deal. GFS is a tad bit more generous with the moisture return on Wednesday and into Thursday, but even so, it's still not really still not sufficient enough, in my opinion, as of right now. Of course, like I said, Wednesday's pretty far off in its own right. It's well over 72 hours out, so a lot of room for changes ahead. But as we go into the weekend here, pretty similar deal. That front passes through, we lose a lot of that moisture, and then as time goes on, we get into next weekend. Moisture returns, become a little bit more sufficient for severe weather. Just how far north these moisture tongues make it is going to be a key factor here. And then as we go into Wednesday into Thursday, we do see a decent moisture tongue try to develop, but it doesn't really look as impressive as the Euro is, Euro is indicating here. But of course, we're looking further out too. So there are some questions with that. But as we close out towards the end of the month here, when things become more zonal, it doesn't really allot for much moisture to advect further to the north here. So still, like I said, a lot of questions here, but I would say somewhere between 23rd, 25th time frame, we need to be on the lookout for maybe a day of severe weather. It could be a couple of days possibly. How robust the threats are is still questionable at this point. So help verify some of that, we can look at this model here from the Euro. It's called the lightning flash density. This is over a 6-hour average lightning flash density, actually, or this is a average lightning flash density over 6 hours. Wherever you see these areas pop up is where you're likely to see thunderstorms over the next 10 days. And from what I can see here, like I said, it looks rather quiet, and this kind of further makes me question the potential for severe storms. Here's some activity over towards Thursday night into Friday morning across the southeast here. And then as we go through the day, there could be a few more storms that fire off towards southern Georgia, maybe South Carolina, Florida. Then after that, 23rd to the 25th, like I said, Iowa was going to be a point of interest, so it's not a surprise to see that there. And there's a little extra spot over here towards Texas. So that being said, like I said, there's potential for severe weather across the board here. I don't know so much about Texas yet. Depending on which solution wins here between GFS and Euro will likely determine whether or not a risk ends up being highlighted for this later on. But like I said, we're too far out to tell at this point. So I guess the last things to look at are the precip loops here. We'll look at the Euro first since we're already here, and then we'll kind of go on from that point. But as we start the week, it's going to be pretty quiet. No surprise here. Here's our low pressure here that's going to help increase the chance of severe weather, I should say. Still not sure if I'm on board with that. I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards no the more I look at these models. And then here's our chance for increased activity over towards the southeast. Early Friday morning could be a little bit hairy as far as the weather is concerned. Throughout the day, we could see spotty showers and storms over here towards the southeast and the Tennessee valleys. Heaviest rain probably will be more so towards the mountains here. And then, of course, as that low moves further off to the north here, we can see increased showers and storms. It almost kind of takes the shape of a nor'easter type setup, but we don't have enough cold air really to get any snow on the backside of this. If anything, towards Canada could be a decent snowstorm, but outside of that, nothing really to be concerned with. Here's that tropical disturbance out towards western Mexico that we'll be having to watch as well. I'm going to probably be making a video about that tomorrow afternoon, and then after that we could see that moisture work its way more so out to the Midwest here, and then maybe towards the Tennessee Valley. In comparison, we also have GFS with its precip type model run up, and it's pretty much a similar deal, pretty much almost identical for those first 240 hours. It's really not until we get past the 10-day mark where we start to see a few stark differences here. We do actually hold the phone here because I saw this a little earlier, but I didn't mention it. I haven't mentioned it yet, obviously, but that cold air does try to make a little bit further of a push to the south here with the GFS front, and it could lead to maybe a few scattered snow showers across the northern tiers of New England here and over towards the Adirondacks. I'm still, after all this time, having trouble pronouncing that, so if you want to make that into a blooper or meme, feel free. But one thing to make note of as well is with the GFS run, while it's not really is pronounced on this run as of right now, we are getting to that point where we're going to start to see winter storms popping up. Right now, it looks like they're going to be staying mostly north of the border, and I think maybe this little remnant area of tropical moisture or whatever this will end up being after it passes through Mexico could play a factor in keeping us sparing us from this upcoming system that would it's ultimately going to end up in Canada here. But with that in mind here, anyone that's used to winter storms and is wondering where they're at, give it time. I think the time is coming soon. But as a whole here, outside of the 23rd to the 25th, where we have that tropical moisture, tropical system, etc., coming into Texas and beyond, not really too much to talk about just yet. But I get the feeling that will be changing. I guess we'll take a look at what the temperatures will look like over the next 6 to 10 days. No real surprises here. We've mentioned it a bunch already. Pretty much out towards the eastern half of the U.S., we have that cooler air dominant due to that trough. It's a classic positive PNA setup. But we are seeing signs of it changing because we have that increased area of cooler than or below average temperatures over here towards Alaska. So that cold air is going to eventually rush in and head back into the west. As far as the overall precipitation outlook is concerned, starts to get a little bit more active out towards the northwest now, and then towards the southwest we even start to see an increase of moisture. Northern Alaska looks like another similar look here. Towards southern Alaska we could be below average on precip here. Northeast could be pretty active. It's really towards the southeast, the mid-Atlantic, and actually the Ohio Valley. It's kind of dry at this point. I do think there could be a few revisements on this possibly, but of course with us being still 6 to 10 days out, somewhat questionable still. Now if we look at the temperatures on days 8 through 14, no surprise with that ridge starting to move east. We have warmer than average temperatures likely over the southeast, over towards the deep south, and the Midwest. Cooler than average temperatures are retreating back more so towards the northwest areas of the U.S. here. And then we, of course, are starting to see that colder air starting to leave from Alaska and now starting to move more so into the U.S. And then as far as the precipitation is concerned, much more active out west with that with the jet stream and the wind pattern changing. And then of course out east it looks a little bit more dry to start out, but I do think that this is going to quickly start to flip here. So that being said, this is what we're looking like for the end of the month at this point. Just a quick little touch up, a quick little bit of my own personal synopsis here. Again, I hope you found the video useful. If you did, make sure you smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, decimate that share button. Make sure you get that notification bell on too. Get notified for every video that pops up. Appreciate you if you do that. Appreciate you being here, watching all the way to the end. For those of you that made it there, till the next time, it's been Metalhead Weatherman. I will see you guys later. Have a good rest of your weekend.